Hello guys, welcome back, and in this session we are going to see how can we use pagination, how can we implement pagination from very scratch, and what does the pagination means. Actually, pagination is nothing but when we are going to talk about efficiency of rendering client, right? Efficiency of rendering the UI. That means the UI should show a certain amount of specific list item, right? So that it won't be taking more time to render all those list items on the screen. And why is that? Because let's say you are going to render thousand of different items, right? Thousand of items in a list. And let's say if thousand of item is working fine, but what if 10,000 or lakhs of item is there, right? So in that case, your UI won't be working. Your browser will get hanged because of so much of data is getting rendered at once. So that is the problem there. And of course, if you are writing any application, over the period of time data will grow, and that all data you cannot show at once on the UI. So to avoid those situations, to make it more efficient, we just need to do one more thing here. So what I'll say is just open a new tab. I'll say open a new window. Okay, I'll do this work in a new window. So let me show you first what exactly our problem is, right? And then we will find out the solution. How can we tackle this? And of course, we know that we are going to implement pagination. So pagination is the solution, but then how we can implement that? All right. So let me first go to our application so that we should be able to log into application, and then everything should be working fine over there, where we left last time. All right. So let's verify if Golang application is working, so that we will have a network call over there, and then we should be able to log into our application. It's taking a bit time. That is because of my system issues. It's actually working slow, but in your case it should be working very fast. That's the benefit of using Golang actually. Still it's working. Let's wait for a couple of more seconds so that we can see that in action. All right. All right, guys, it's still running. There's some issue with the system. That's why it's taking time. Meanwhile, I'll give a quick intro what we are exactly trying to learn, what we are going to learn, right? So in this video, before implementing pagination, what we'll be learning is we'll learn the advanced concept of Mongodb. That is, of course, one of the advanced concept of Mongodb. That is, of course, pipelines and the aggregate function. And what is that exactly? Aggregate function is nothing. Just assume if you guys are aware of MySQL or any SQL query, we are joining multiple tables, right? We have multiple tables over there, and then we are performing certain functionality on all those tables. And if we need data, of course, we need to connect with multiple tables, right? And then after fetching all those data, if we want to perform some operation, let's say concat or sum of all those columns, right? So for that we are using all those queries over there, right? So that is what we are going to do here in this case, in case of MongoDB. But in MongoDB we don't have the concept of join, but we can achieve the similar functionality. And how can we do that? So for achieving that functionality, we need to use MongoDB aggregation function. And how we are going to use aggregation function, it's very simple, and you all can do that. So let's see that in action. Meanwhile, we'll start writing code, and then we'll try finally and execute that code. So very first thing is, of course, we are going to implement pagination, and for that what we need is we need page number as well as limit. And what page number will say, okay, you need to, let's say we'll say, okay, on page number 1 you are going to show me this much of data. That means let's assume we have 10 data to show on page number 1. So limit is going to be 10, that is data to show is 10, and then page number is 1. So next time if client will say give me page number 2, that means if there's data, give all those data present on page number 2. That means you should have a data on, as per calculation, you should have a data in the DB more than 10, right? Then only you can show those data in the page number 2. So that's exactly what we are going to do here. We are going to do similar functionality. And without talking much, let's go back in server folder actually. And then what I will do here is I will just, very first thing is I will create a DTO, and we have DTO ready over there. So I will say, okay, just create one book DTO over here. So I'll say type get books, for example, get books, and I'll say filter. You can name it whatever you want, but it should be as per a specific functionality. So why I'm going to name this filter, because I'm going to use the same DTO to filter the data as well, and this time we are going to filter data based on book name. All right. So let me just define page number, and it's going to be of type integer, of course, and then we'll say JSON, right? Since data coming from the client is going to be JSON data, right? So I'll say page number, page underscore number. I'll be sending from the client in this format. You can accept in whatever you are comfortable, or which is the actual way of doing that. Okay. So now next thing I will say limit, and this is also going to be integer, and then here also I'll say JSON, and here I'll say limit. And we need one more thing over here, book name as filter, right? So I'll say book name. Okay, I'll say if you want to search with the book name, so there you should be able to do that as well. So in this case I'll say book name, and then it is going to be of type string, right? Then again JSON will be there, and here I'm going to say okay, book name, right? Same key we are going to use on client side so that it will be compatible with the backend, right? So now let me save this. We are done with creating DTO, right? And then finally we should come back to book service, since we are going to implement pagination on book first, and then later we'll implement on staff as well, right? So we are done with that, but here instead of getting all books, right, this time we are fetching all those books. Let's say we have thousands of books, so we are fetching all those thousands of books at once, which is not efficient, right? That's why we are going to follow this pagination. We are going to implement this pagination. So here I will say okay, that's fine, but get me one more method over here as interface method, and this time the function name is going to be, let's say, get paginated book. So I'll say get paginated books, right? And here we need that DTO which we created just now. So I'll say filter DTO, all right, and then this DTO is going to be of type get book DTO, not get book but get books filter, right? Correct. So we have this data in place, and then we'll just implement this interface down below on this book service, and then we'll be using this functionality. Okay, so let me just copy it here, and I will come back here, and I will say just implement this. And how can we do that? We know that, right? We'll just say okay, just register this method, implement this method on this specific struct, and here we are going to say okay, this struct name is going to be book service this time. All right, so I'll just copy paste it here. That's completely fine. And then here what, not double star, it's going to be single star, since it will point to the specific struct, right? And what is exactly pointer? If you guys are not aware of that, I will make a separate video on pointer, and it's very easy actually, and it will make, using pointer you can efficiently handle all those parameters which is being passed in the function. All right, so if you want that video, please put down your comments in the comment section, so I will make it for you. And then here what I'm going to say is okay, we have filters over there. So very first thing what I'll say is okay, filters, and then I'll create one filters over here so that we can apply these filters on when we are fetching data from Mongodb. All right, so I'll say bison dot m. Okay, this is going to be m is nothing, it is a map. Okay, so this is just type in Mongodb, so it denotes a map. Instead of bison.m you can use map of a string and interface, as well as map of string as and any as well. So it completely depends on you. Basically it's a map, okay, so which contains key and value pairs. So here what I'm going to say is okay, that's completely fine. I'll say okay, just add one condition over here, $or. And what does that mean? That means this $or is an operator in Mongodb. Okay, so what it will say, okay, you are going to apply this operator as a filter, and then this time you will have multiple conditions. Since you are saying to use $or, that means there should be multiple condition, either this or that, right? So you will say, okay, this time just use bson.a. Bson.a is nothing but array. Bson.a array, a for array here. So I'll say, okay, bson.a, and then here I'm going to put multiple condition, and the condition which I'm going to put here is, I'll say, okay, m. Now the condition will be map, and then here I'm going to say, okay, is deleted. And why I'm going to say this, let's say because at a point of time not is deleted, but you can use any of the field here. So let's say if you want to delete that book, but you don't want to delete it from the database, but this book should not be showing to the client as well. So that is called, actually that is the concept of soft delete. Okay, but if we are going to do hard delete, that means we are going to strictly delete it from the collection as well, from the database as well, so that data doesn't exist at all, right? But in this case, what will happen is, data will be there in DB, but based on this is deleted flag, those data will not be fetched from the database, and the data will of course not be available on UI. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, let's is deleted, and then I'll say, okay, just check this if this field exists over there or not. So I'll say again m, and then here we are going to check first if field exists. There can be two scenarios, that field exists, and then you are just going to compare this is deleted as false or true, right? But in other scenario is, this field is not going to present at all. There's no field with name is deleted, right? So first I'm going to say, okay, first check for this. So for that, Mongodb tells, okay, you need to use this $exist operator, and what does this will do? This will go inside the collection, a specific collection, and then search for this is deleted key inside a document, and if that matches, of course this condition is going to be true. So I'm going to say, okay, either this is going to be false, right, or else I'll say copy paste, and I'm just going to say, okay, in this case it will exist but it will false. Okay, either this is deleted is not going to be there at all in that document, or is deleted will be there but the value will be false. That means that value is not deleted, right? So I created this, and then next what I'm going to do is, since we are going to get all those book of a specific shop, if I'm a user, I'm an owner of this shop, I should be getting all those books which belongs to me only, not the other shop, right? So in that case, what I'm going to say here is, okay, I need one more condition over here, and I will say just match this condition as well. So are we using created by? Yes, of course we are using created by. And how can we verify that? Go back in model, and you can see here we have that field over there, right? So I will use this field, and let's close this. So very first thing I'm going to say, okay, created by filter should also be there, and here we are going to say just use that. Not in this filter we don't have that ID, right? Created by ID. So let's modify this once more, and here just say this time it is going to be a created by. All right, created by is nothing but it's going to be a shop ID. So let's be more specific, and I'll say shop ID, right? And then it's going to be of type primitive.object ID, right? And then we can say, okay, shop underscore ID. Cool. I think it should be like this. Yeah. So we have that data in place, and then I'll go back here. I will just use that ID here. So I'll say, okay, filters DTO, not filters DTO, filter DTO dot shop ID, right? We are done with this condition. Now next what we are going to say is, we are going to say, okay, page number will be there also, right? So very first thing I'll say, okay, page is going to be search DTO, and search DTO is having page number. So I'll say page number. Why is it breaking? Okay, it's not breaking actually. The suggestion is not coming over there. So here what I'll say, okay, search page number, and then we are going to check for the page number, because from the client any data may come, right? And as a coder, as a developer, we should verify those data. We should see the validation of those data, right? So I'll say, okay, if page number is less than 0, let's say, so I'll say page is less than equals to 0, that means we are going to make it as a 1, right? And then not search DTO, this should be filter DTO actually, so I'll just copy this from here and paste it here. And then this bison should also be imported. It is present on the MongoDB driver package, right? So we need to import that as well, so that we won't be getting any error. And here this is fine, right? Now we have page number, actual page number, and then similarly we need to do with the limit as well. So I'm going to say, okay, let's check for limit as well. So this time limit is going to be, okay, by default, let's, okay, no, not this. So we'll say, okay, filter DTO, and then I'm going to use that property limit, right? Now I'm going to check this for the same. If limit is less than equals to 0, that means we need to put limit equals to 10. By default, let's say our application is assuming the value as a 10. You can, of course, you can play with these values and see how efficiently that is working. All right. So next, what I'm going to say here is, okay, that's fine. Now we need to tell it to MongoDB as well. Like, let's say in the first page, how much data you are going to skip, right? And similarly in the second page, and so on. So for that, I'm going to create a skip variable here, and I'm going to say, okay, whatever data will be coming, we cannot say 1, 2, 3, or you need to, if we are assume, let's say, just assume this, you are going to show 10 data on page number 1, right? Then on the page number 2, that 10 data should not be there. Instead, data should be started from 11, right? That 10 data should be skipped. That's what we are trying to do here. But we cannot say this statically as a static value, like you need to do 10 and then next time 20. That is going to be a calculative value, right? That is a dynamic value, and that is totally dependent on page number and limit as well. So okay, skip will be, what should be the value of a skip? So I'll say, okay, page -1 and then multiplied by limit. So this is going to be your skip value. So if, let's assume, page number is going to be 0, so it will say, okay, what will it say? Not, page number is never going to be 0, because we are checking over here and we are assigning it as 1. So in that case, what will happen? Page number will be 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0, and 0 multiplied by any number, it will be 0. So that means in case of page number 1, we don't have to skip any of the record. It will start from the 0, 1, right? Now let's coming back to page number 2. In that case, what will happen here is, page number is going to be 2, right? So 2 minus 1 is 1, and then multiplied by limit. That means 1 multiplied by 10. That means in page number 2, data will fetched from 11, right? It will skip 10 records. That's what we are calculating here. I hope it's very clear. If you are not able to understand it, let me know in the comment section. I will try to reiterate this. I'll try to make you understand in very easy way, more easy way. All right. So next, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to implement one filter over here, which we are accepting as a DTO variable, and that is of course the book name. So I'll check, okay, let's, not filters, it should be filter DTO, and I'll say, okay, check for book name as well. If the book name is there, then if book name is not, of course, not equals to empty, that means book name is there. And if that is the case, so I'm going to assign one more filter in this filters. So I'm going to say, okay, then check for the book name as well. And the key, exactly what we are saving in DB, let's check that. So I'll go back here in the model and see what key is exactly getting saved over there. So book name, okay, book name is getting saved. So I'll copy it from here, come back here in the service, and I'll say, okay, just apply this filter as well, right? And this time I'm going to say, okay, we are applying this filter, and how can we apply? We know that either we are going to provide the exact value or we can search for the specific word, right? Let's say you have a book with name the pragmatic coder, right? But the thing is, you just want to search with the name pragmatic. Then what about the and coder, right? We are not going to use that. Basically, we are going to say we are going to match it with the any word. If that word matches with the book name or book code, then we should have those. We should have that book in the client, right? We should be able to fetch that book. That's what we are going to say here. But here one more thing, instead of this book name, I want to make it on book name as well as code, since we have code as well there, right? So for that, are we going to define a new key? Not at all. Instead, what I'm going to say is, just instead of book name, just use search, or let's say book search. All right, and then here I will say book search. All right, so let me save it and go back to service file, and there what we need to do is, okay, this search, how will know that this specific key or value is going to be a name or going to be a key, right? So it is going to be either name or it is going to be key. So we know that in either cases, if there's going to be multiple condition and we need to any one of them should be true, so in that case we are going to use OR operator, right? So that any one condition is going to be true, and then we will be getting the data back, right? So here I'm going to say, okay, just use this once more, and I will say, okay, OR is there, so just put one more OR over there, right? So I will say, okay, filters DTO of $OR, all right, and then here we will say, okay, that's completely fine. But then if we know that as from the concept of map, if we are going to put this will actually replace this OR. That is not the expectation, right? So how can we do that actually? So let's find out the solution over here, and then we should be able to do that actually. So what else we can do? Alright, so what we are going to do here is we are going to make two OR condition over here. Since if we'll do like this, then of course this is going to override this map key, since map can have only one key, one unique key actually, right? So what I'm going to say here is, okay, this is going to be filters A, let's name it filters A, and that is going to be of course there. And then I'm going to say, okay, why is still showing error? Okay, it should not be colon, it should be dot, that's why it's showing error. And here also I'm going to say dot. Now we have this condition ready over there, and then just remove this condition, since this is required at every places, right? That means this condition is of course required. We cannot omit this created by, otherwise one shop owner will fetch other shop owner books, and that's not the expectation. So here I'm going to say is, okay, let's say filters B, and this time I'm going to say bson dot m, right? And then in this case I'm going to say, okay, let's assign created by here, not here. So okay, here I'm going to say filters B, and then here I'll say, okay, one more condition will be there with name $OR. This time we are going to use $OR operator, because we know that we don't know whether this book search is going to be a code or whether this book search is going to be a name, actual book name, right? So we need OR condition over there. So I'll say, okay, that's fine. And in this case, of course, we are going to use bson.m once more here, and then we are going to provide that value here, right? So what we'll say, okay, I will use bson.m here, and I'll say any of this condition is going to be true, not bson.m, it should be actually array, because with $OR operator we should have multiple condition over there, right? So that's why it is bson.a, and then here we are going to say this time, okay, this is going to be the condition, and what should be the condition actually? So I will say, okay, we have book name as well over there, so I'll say book name, and then here I'll say this is going to be, let's say, bison.m once more, and we are going to search match it with word, right? Not the exact full name. Of course it will work for exact full name as well, but we need to match it with a word, right? So here I'm going to say, okay, MongoDB says if you want that kind of functionality, you need to use one more operator over there, and that is regex. And if you are not aware of what is regex, regex is nothing but it is called regular expression, which will find a certain pattern in a string, all right, or which we are using for modifying the string in certain functionality, or certain, you can say, the way we want, all right. So for that regex is being used. You just need to search it and get more in depth of what is regex actually. We are not going to cover regex here in this tutorial, but then $regex is the operator given by MongoDB. We can use that operator and match our string as per we want. So here I'm going to say is, okay, that's fine. So I'll say use filters DTO and then book search. So book name can be matched here, right? And then one more thing here we need to provide is options. And what I'm going to say, not like this, I'm going to say $options, right? And here I'm going to say, okay, search it in whole string. So I'll say I. Okay, that is how we are going to match with the words. All right. Now next thing, we need one more condition over here, and that is going to be related to book code as well. So I'll just search it from here, Control C, Control V, not here, here, right? So now this is going to be not book name, but this time it is going to be book code. Okay, so the same case we need to do here, book search. Either of these two is going to be true, then only we will be getting those result, or else it's not going to work. We will be getting empty result or null. We are done with second condition, right? Now we need to merge this both condition, right? So for that, what I'm going to say is, okay, let's merge this both condition, and in this case I'm going to name it as a filters, right? You can name it whatever you want as per your convenience, but at the end it should be named as a function as per functionality. Okay, it should be defining the functionality actually. So this time I'm going to say it as a filters, and then I'll say m, right? Now we need to merge this both a and b. That means both a and b should be true at any scenario. Then we should be able to fetch the data. So for that, what I'm going to say, okay, MongoDB says, okay, if you want both condition to be true, that means this filters A and filters B should be true, then you need to use AND condition. So for that, I'm going to use and if anything I start with dollar here is going to be an operator in MongoDB, and you can read the MongoDB documentation and read about the specific operator. We have a lot of operator over there, but in this case we'll learn a couple of operator, and then if you want more operator to be explained here, please put down your comment in the comment section. I will try to explain all those operators. Of course it is not going to be all those MongoDB operator, but the one which is mostly being used by companies or mostly being used in the application, right? So I'll say okay, and just use and then similarly like or we need to use and then we are going to say okay, bison dot array, of course, and also if we are going to use and, then array will be there, right? Multiple condition will be there. So I'll say okay, let's say filters A, I'll say filters A, and then I'll say filters B, right? And then here I'm going to put the next filters, and what is that? Of course the created by. So I'll say created by is going to be bookshop ID, correct? So let's use that shop ID, right? Now we are good with the condition, and then it should be working fine in the expected way, right? So why is that so? Created by untyped string constant. How come? Can we do this? I don't think we can do like this, since it is expecting this filter is this AND operator is actually expecting data in this format. So let's do that. I'll say okay, forget about that, I'll give you in this format. Now this is actually legal, completely legal, right? So now here I'll say okay, created by is going to be bookshop ID. So filters dot dto, not dot dto, filters dto dot, I'll say shop ID. Cool. So this is how we are going to construct our query dynamically, so that it will be adaptable, so that it will be more flexible, and you should be able to search all those documents based on this criteria, right? Next, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say okay, that's fine, we are done with all those filters. Now next is going to be very interesting, and we talked about that. So how can we do that actually? So we are going to say okay, just remove it from here. So now this time what data we need, we are going to fetch data based on the, let's say, based on page number and limit, of course. But then we should also know how many total data are there, how many total records are there in that collection, right? So that using that total records, we should be able to show the page number on our client side, right? And how can we do that? Since we need the data as well as total record, that means we need two different data. One is completely the list item, and other one is the completely different data. So here what I'm going to say is okay, just create a pipeline. We know that how can we use aggregate, right? So for that we need to create a pipelines, and pipelines is going to be nothing but a definition of different stages. And what is stages? Stages is nothing, just assume you have multiple different functionality over there. Let's say you have 10 different functions. So starting from the top, very first function will execute, and then next on, and then next on, and so on, right? So if you assume that, then one function is going to perform a certain functionality on your data, which is fetched from the database, right? And of course it will be fetched from database or collection based on certain condition, and in this case we are going to use these filters. So think it as like, based on this filter you will get the data in the first function, right? And then that function will pass those data to the next function, and then next function will process some, it will modify some data, or you can say it will process those data, do some modification, or it will just pass those data as it is to the next function, and so on, right? That means from the top data is just coming to the bottom, and that is exactly a stages. That means every function you can call it as a stages, and every function will perform certain operation on the data. Either it is going to be used, either it is going to be structure the data, or it is going to modify the data. Okay, so that is called exactly a stage. And how we can define a stage? So let's see that in action. So here we know that we have multiple stages over there. That means it is going to be type of array, right? Cool. Next thing, very first thing what we need, we assume that okay, we will fetch the data based on certain condition. So very first stage, let's say I will write here for your convenience, I'll say okay, match stage, right? So here what I'm going to say is okay, you need array of pipelines, array of stages. So I'll give you that. So I'm going to say okay, pson.m, and I will say very first thing is you just collect all those data based on certain condition. And how can you match those data based on these filters? MongoDB says you just need to use $match operator. So I'm going to use $match here, and I will say filters, which we have created over there here. Okay, now very first stage is our match stage. That means based on this criteria, based on this condition, data will get fetched from the MongoDB, right? Now once we have those data, what else we are going to do, right? So let's say I'm going to do one more thing over here, and I will say, let's say I'm going to connect this book with the user collection. And why we need that? For example, user is going to perform certain operation. Let's say manager, we can have n number of manager, and which manager has, changed the book data. We need to identify which manager did that. For that, we need a user name, right? And if we'll go back in book, we can see here in model, we have modified by. That means the specific user or specific staff has modified these documents, right? So, and who has modified actually? This time we are just storing the user ID. We don't know the name of the user. For that, what we need to do is we need to use this ID. We need to take out this ID and go where? We need to go in the user collection or a staff collection, right? And from there, we need to fetch those data, right? Okay, this specific user is, let's say we find one user over here as with modified by as 1. So what we will do, we will just take out this one and go inside the staff document, a staff collection, and search for the staff which is having ID 1, right? Of course, ID 1 will be always unique. So you will find a staff with ID 1 as a single document, and then you will be having the name of the staff as well. So that is what we are trying to do here. So here what I'll say, okay, next stage is going to be join, let's say. Okay, and join with user, not user, I'm going to say staff. All right. So of course this is also going to be of type map, and then I will say, and we know that what we are going to do, we are going to join that specific collection, but then how we will do? So for that MongoDB says, okay, you need to use one more operator here, and that is $lookup. $lookup will do, based on the provided configuration, it will take out those data and search in the respective collection, and where it will search exactly, that we need to define here. So let's define that, all those data here, and here I'm going to say from, right? From, it is going to be search. From means where it is going to look for the data. So it is going to look for the data in a staff collection, and then we need to say local field. So what is the local field which is going to pick? So in this case we'll be having, let's go in book, and in this case we'll be having modified by, right? That is the local field for this book. So I will say pick up this specific key, and this is going to be modified by, right? So pick up this specific key, and then where it is being referenced, this key will be where? This key will be in book collection. Of course this key is there in book collection, but then using this key where you are searching in a staff, and then staff will have this ID as a key, right? So you need to map this with a staff ID, right? So I'll say, okay, foreign field, this is your local field, and foreign field is nothing but from where you are searching with the data, right? So I'll say, okay, foreign field is going to be underscore ID, right? So underscore ID is also is going to be the staff ID, which is getting saved in the book as a modified by, right? That is what we are doing from the client. And then we are going to say, okay, that's fine. We need to do one more thing here if we want, or else we can leave it as it is. So let's do that. What I'm going to say is, okay, once you are done with fetching data, give me this data in the specified name or a specified key. So I'll say, okay, give me this data as a staff, since you will be having an array of the data, even though it will match only single data, but you will get an array. All right. So we are good with this join with a staff. I hope you understand it clearly. If you guys are not able to get it, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to resolve that as early as possible. And then here we are good. So next, finally, what we need to do is, okay, we cannot do like this. This should be like not object, but this should be, I can say bison.m again. So bison.m, right? Because this is, of course, map of key and value pairs, right? So we have the second stage. Now, in third stage, what I'm going to do is, okay, once we have this data, and we know that only one staff will be there, so why to keep the array? Let's take out that array, take out the exact item as a single object. So I'm going to say, okay, this time I'm going to say unwind. Unwind is nothing, but it will just not unwind. I will say, okay, take out a single item from the array, from the staffs array, all right, and add also from the specific index you can say, all right. And how can we do that? So just you can relate it with, now the data is going to be go inside a different function, and that function will take out those data based on the array index. That's as simple as that, right? So what I'm going to say here is, okay, now let's pass one more stage over here, and the stage is nothing but we are just saying a config, we are just providing a configuration, and based on that MongoDB is performing all those things, right? So I'll say, okay, now let's assume that we have those data, all right. Even though we are going to take out the single item from the array, then where we need to keep that single item, we need to keep that single item back to the original object, right? So for that I'm going to say, okay, for that MongoDB is going to say, okay, if you want to add a certain variable or certain property, you need to use one more operator over here, and that is $add fields. So I'll say $add fields, and in this case again it's going to be bson m, and here you are going to name it as the key which you want. So in this case I want it as a staff, since only single staff will be there, all right. So I'll say staff, and then that is fine. Then again it is going to be bson.m, okay. So now here we need to say, okay, basically you are saying just add this new fields staff. You can add multiple over there, that's completely on you, but this time I need just one, right, staff. So you just need to say, okay, staff is there, and then you need to say take out the data from the specific array at certain index. So for that MongoDB says, okay, you need to use one more operator over there, and what is that exactly? That is dollar and then array, not array, sorry, it's going to be array and then element at. You are not going to type it fully as element, but ELEM, that's it. So basically you need to say, okay, now take out the data from the specific array element, and that at where? So let's say this time it's going to be array, right? So array element at, that means of course the data is going to be array. So we need to say, okay, you need to take this data from the array, and where is that array? That array is nowhere but here, right? So you need to define, you need to say, okay, you need to go inside this array. Which array? Just name this. And how can you name that? Any variable or property that exists on the root level of the object, you should be able to access that using dollar as well. This time it is not going to be operator, this time it is going to be root object, all right. So here you need to say, okay, the same name which you have used here as alias name. So I will say staffs, all right. And then the second parameter I'm going to say is 0. That means you need to take array item from 0, index at 0. Cool. I hope we are clear till here, right? So now we have that data as a staff object on our main object, right? Next what we are going to do is we are going to project this time. That means we'll have, since we are filtering all those staffs, right? But the thing is, when it will join that collection, a staff may have lot of data. You can see here staff have this much of data, right? But we need only the staff name here, correct? So in that case what we are going to say, okay, let's project this. That means again we are going to send this data to the next stage, and this time I'm going to say, okay, take out only required data. Take out only required data. And how can we do that? So MongoDB says, okay, you need to give us one more stage, and in that stage you need to use project. That means you will be projected with only this much of data. So for that, of course, we are going to use project. $project is again one operator here, and then I will say it is going to be of type map, right? So now what data we need here, we need to define all those data here. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, take out underscore id, and this underscore id is going to be where? It's going to be of, it is going to be exist on root object. That is nothing where we are going to execute this pipeline, on which model we are going to execute this pipeline, on which collection we are going to execute this pipeline. That is going to be the root object. If we are going to execute these pipelines on book model, on book collection, then book is going to be the top object. So of course from book we need the id, underscore id. So we'll say 1, project it. If I will say 0, that means it won't project it at all. It will just omit that data. All right. So what else we need here? Let's go back in book. I need all those data from the book. So book name, book code, description, author and all, right? So I'll say, okay, let's take out all those data. I'll say book name 1, right? And then book code, then description, and then author, right? And what else we have over there? So author, book price, page count, published year, right? So go back here and then book price, right? And then published year, right? And then what else? Let's go back in book, and status and page count is also there. So I'll say, okay, status, and then page count should also be there. So I'll say page count, right? So we have all those data, but we need created date as well. So I'll say created date and modified date as well. So created date and then modified date, right? So we have all those, we took out all those data from the book collection, and then we'll be having one more data because we have assigned one more field over there in the last stage, right? And that is of course with the key staff. So I will say, okay, add this one more here, and I will say staff, right? So here I'm going to say, okay, you're going to add one more here, and then this time it is going to be staff, not a staff directly, but we'll say just 1, so that it will add a staff as well, project staff as well in the output data. All right, so we are good with all this, right? And what else we need here then? Do we need anything else here? Yes, of course we need. We have final data in our hand, and this data is related to books, right? But then at the beginning we decided we need to have one more data, that is total records as well, so that based on the total records we are going to show that page number on the UI. And how can we do that, right? So for that what we are going to do is, we need one more query, right? Because this query will give you, this pipeline aggregation query will give you only this list record, right? Then how can you fetch the total records? That means you need a separate query for that as well. But then MongoDB says, no, you don't need to execute a separate query for that. Instead you can say me, okay, execute one more query here in this pipeline itself, and I will give you the data whichever you want. That's flexibility of MongoDB, and that's how this pipelines works, and that is the powerful feature of this pipeline actually, MongoDB pipeline. And how can we do that? MongoDB says, okay, that's fine. Till now here you have provided me with all those stages. Provide me one more stages here, and this time I'm going to say fetch total records. Okay, you will have all those data, and that is going to be a separate data. Okay, that is not going to be mingle up with this new query. Okay, and how can we define that query? We can say, okay, this time you just assume this stage as, or execute this stage as a separate query. That means separate data we should be getting. So for that I'm going to say, okay, let's provide bson.m once more, and then MongoDB says you need to provide one more operator here, and that is going to be facet. Okay, this is one operator which is going to be now execute separately, and but in the same pipeline. So here again I'm going to say bson.m. You just need to remember this, how it is working, you need to understand it. Okay, so facet we have, and then we need to say okay, data is going to be coming as bson.a array. Okay, and now this time we need two data, not we need two data, but this time we are going to provide certain fields or certain inputs to the specific stage, right? So I'm going to say okay, I'm providing you with this data, and the data is of course the page number as well as limit, not page number, I'm sorry, this time it is going to be skip and limit. Okay, so I will say not like this, it's expecting an bson.a, so of course I'm going to use bson.m, that is map, and then I will say skip. And how can we do that? So MongoDB says you need to use skip. Okay, so whatever will be there inside this $facet, okay, it will be executed independently. Okay, not independently, but you will be getting multiple data in a single pipelines. That's the beauty of this MongoDB pipelines and $facet operator. So here I'm going to provide how much we need to skip. So we have already defined over there skip variable, and we are going to use same, and then we need to also say you need to limit the data as well. So I'll say limit, and then this time we have limit as well over there, so I will use just limit, and then we are done with the data. So now we need one more thing over here as a total record. All right, so I will say total, right, and then records. All right, total records, and in this case I'm going to say this total records is going to be again the same array, and then here we need to provide bson.m and then $count. This time we are going to take that total record in a key with name count. Okay, and then I will say count. Cool. So this $count is actually the operator, and then this $count is going to be the key in which your count will be coming. All right, we are good with this. Now we have all those stages ready over there. Why is that so? Missing key in map literal. Why is that? We have map over there, that's fine, and then data we have array, that's also fine. So bson.m, that's correct. So what we are missing over there? Okay, this should not be, this should be the colon. All right, not here but here, it should not be comma, it should be colon. All right, so we are done with these pipelines. Now we just need to execute this pipeline so that we can get the data back, right? So I will say okay, we have this pipeline ready, and how can we execute this pipeline? That's the next question. So to execute the pipeline we need to just say okay, we have the access of Mongo collection, so I will say bs dot repository dot, and this time this is going to be book repository, right? So we have already defined that aggregate functionality over there, so we'll use the same functionality here. We'll just call that method, and in this you can see this method is actually expecting pipeline as well as context. So we'll just provide these pipelines which we created now, right? Pipelines and then the context. So we have session context as well, so we'll just provide this, and you can see it is, what is it doing? Cannot use pipelines variable of primitive a as mongo.pipeline. Okay, it's this is actually expecting something different. We are providing something different over here. So we just need to modify this, and we need to say okay, this time you will be getting array of stages. So how can I do that? Let's go back in repo. Where's that repository folder? Here, and this is just a method. No, this is just the expose of all those repositories. So we need to go inside Mongo repository where the actual implementation resides, right? And here we have aggregate method, and so here we need to change this Mongo pipeline to Mongo dot, not Mongo, this is going to be primitive.a, I believe. not primitive.a. Yeah, it should be primitive.a actually, because we are providing the array of stages over there. So let me just copy it from here. I will just copy it from here, and then why is this giving error? Because we have changed the implementation modification. We have changed the implementation, and then we need to notify the interface as well, because we changed the implementation. So it should be as per the interface, because at the end we are going to use this interface method, not the implementation method, right? So here I will say, instead of this pipeline, just use this primitive.a, and then we need to import the primitive as well, not pipelines. Okay, pipelines is already there, so I'll just delete this. We are good, right? So let's go back in book service, and here you can see we don't have any error, but this aggregate will return two things: either it is going to be a data or it is going to be an error. So I will say okay, we'll be having the data or error, right? So we'll accept both, correct? Now if there's any error, so what should I say? If there's any error, okay, if there's any error, so I'll say just check for the error. If error not equals to nil, right? So this time what I'm going to return is, of course, this method should be returning something, so that we should be able to pass those error to the controller function, and then it will get handled from a centralized place. We already did that. So it's just expecting an interface, and in this case I'm just going to return, let's say I'm going to return nil since there's error, right? But in case of error, I'm just going to format this. I'll say okay, fmt dot and error of, I'll say just format this. So how can I do that? Let's copy that from somewhere and we'll paste it here. We don't need to write it more and more, because that is already written over there somewhere. So let's go back in staff service and see there if we are throwing somewhere any error. No, we are not throwing any error from here as well. And let's say in auth service, so here we are doing that. So just copy this from here, and we will just pass this data back to the controller, right? And if there's any error, that controller should not be checking for the error. It will just pass those errors to the context errors. Okay, so I will just say okay, the data is there, so just use this, right? And then this time it is going to be 500, because this error is coming from the aggregate function, and that aggregate function is actually talking with the database collections, right? So error might happen in the collection itself, not the exact code. If there's an error with the code, that is also part of 500, because your server is crashing actually in that case. So what I'll say here is, instead of user service, I will say okay, this is book service actually. So I'll say book service. All right, and then this method is not login actually. This method name is get paginated books. So I'll copy it from here and paste it here. So let's delete this, and then we'll pass this actual error over here. So this is fine. And next, what we'll be having the data as well. So how can we say this data? How can we pass this data back to the client? So okay, in that case, of course, we are returning error, not error, but the interface. You can see here we are just returning the interface from, and okay, we are returning interface from this method. So we'll just say okay, you don't have to worry about anything, just return the data, and then error is going to be nil in this case. We are done with this function. We are done with this function completely, and this should be working actually as per the expectation how we discussed it, right? I will copy this function from here and use this function instead of get all. And where we need to use that? We know that we need to use this function on a book controller, because we have implemented this functionality on a book service. If this is working fine, we'll implement that in the staff as well. So, but let's do this time on the book. So here what we need to do is, okay, go back to get all books, and we are no more going to use this get all books, or you can just leave this as it is. You just need to copy this and paste it over here, right? Because everything is going to be almost same, but then the function name is going to be get paginated books. Okay, so I'll say okay, use this get paginated books now, or just don't make it more complex, just use get paginated book instead of get all books. But then here we need two parameters. One is DTU. So how can we take out DTU? We know that how we are going to take data from the body. So I'll just say copy it and paste it here. It should start working. And book DTO, not book DTO, this time just say book filter DTO. That makes more sense, right? So I'll say get book filter, right? And then that pass this filter over here. I will say just pass, not and, we just need to pass this book filter DTO here, and boom, we are done with that. Now we will be having all those data in place. Let's see that, let's verify that in UI, and we should be able to get all those data properly. There should not be any error or something, and if it is there, if any error is there, of course we will dive into debugging and then we'll rectify all those issues. Since we know that this is the way we are developing application in the enterprise level, right? Of course we need to be very fast there, but this is the way, this is the actual way you are going to reach there. All right, but at the end of the tutorial you should be able to do this manually. That means yourself. You should not rely on any other resources or something, and you will be very advanced in the concept of Golang, Vue.js and Mongodb. Okay, so enough talking, let's go back in UI and I will say okay, let's log in here. Before that I just want to see the console as well, so that if there's any error we should be able to identify the error, why this error is coming. So I'll say okay, this is fine, just try to log in. I'll say okay, and then gmail.com, password is going to be password. So let's log in, and this time I'm going to log in as admin. So we need to trigger this, since we know that in the previous video we have implemented this kind of functionality. So I'll just click login, and you can see login successful, and then it should redirect to this page, right? We are seeing the data over there. Default data is there, not default, I think only one data is there, but why all other fields are not coming? So let's verify that why it's not coming. Payload, are we passing any payload? No, we are not passing any payload here. We are just passing the empty data over there. So that what it will do, it will just take out data, it will just assume page number is going to be 1 and then limit is going to be 10, but then it should be working. So let's see that data, if we got the data or not. Okay, we are getting the required formatted data, but then data is not there inside that formatted object, because we know that in $facet we are expecting data as well as the total records, but it is actually not there, it is coming as empty. And why is that so? That may be because we are applying certain condition over there. Because of those conditions the data is not being matched. And how can we verify that? First thing is, you can just open MongoDB and you can verify that if the created by is getting matched or not, because that is the very first key point or where you need to look for, right? Or else you just go back here and go back in this get paginated books and just, okay, let me go back here in implementation, and then there what you can say is, okay, this is fine, and then okay, this or should be true, but then this should be based on a certain condition, right? So actually this is also false, this we cannot do like this. So what we need to do here is, we need to append this B dynamically in filters. And how can we do that? We will see that in the upcoming videos, in the next video. But then one more issue might be here is this created by. This created by actually depends on the shop ID, and we are not passing any shop ID over there. That is the issue. So just pass that shop ID for now. And how can we do that? We know that if we will go in middleware, if you remember, or you just need to go inside the middleware function, and then you can see there in auth middleware we are just validating the token, right? If the token is validated, we are attaching one key over there, that is user ID, correct? So this user ID is of course going to be the shop ID, right? Book shop ID in case of admin, but then we need to make this compatible in case of a staff as well. So first let's do it with owner, that means shop owner. And then how can we do that? We'll go here and then we will say, okay, get books filter is there, right? So we'll say, okay, there will be one ID over there, shop ID. I'll say shop ID, and then this is going to utils dot convert to object ID, and from where this ID will be coming. So this ID will be present on context directly, and this time I'm going to say get a string, right? And from here you can pass the key. So key is going to be of course user ID, and then you will be getting the shop ID. Now this shop ID you can assign back to book filter. So I'll say book shop filter, not book shop but the book filter dot shop ID is going to be this shop ID. Cool. So we are good with almost everything. Now if you guys want to execute this or run it or test it, now you can do that, but we'll debug this in the upcoming videos. Thank you so much guys, and let me know in the comment section if you like these videos, and let me know if you find any issue. We'll meet in the next video.